Hey guys, we're down at Turbo People today. I'm with Job. We're gonna work on this car. It's a old school, about 40-year-old Porsche race car, 966, I believe. The bodywork is off of it, which gives a whole nother look into the architecture and beauty and craftsmanship and of a vehicle that was designed to compete at events like Le Mans, 40 years ago. So there was a couple of things with the engine that the technicians had to work through, but now it's ready for some tuning. So we're gonna make some runs today and get it ready to go back out for some of those vintage racing events that are held throughout the year.
I love having this. I love having a place where we can come, we can play with this. We look at these old race cars or even new race cars, right? Like a week ago, we had a 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated engine on here. And now we've got this deal, maybe it'll make 600. But for the time, it was awesome. And when you look at the engine and what guys were doing in the 80s, right, when we were kids, some of the stuff is not only relevant, but done better than the offerings that are available today to the aftermarket. So it's pretty cool because as I learn more, right, I learn stuff all the time. I'm aware of things, and even I've learned some stuff recently regarding wastegates, right? Like the oldest thing for turbos that it's been around forever. And I look, and the guys at Porsche had it nailed when I was 4 years old, and here I am, I'm 47, and I'm like, oh wow, these guys got it, like they knew.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the, if you could creep your way around something that used to race in like IMSA, Formula One, Le Mans, back in that era, the engineering principles were a standard and things were done pretty well. And through the growth of the market and overconsumption and everyone wanted to get a piece of the cake, a lot of things may have gotten lost in translation. But looking at this is a pure OEM engineered race car.
I think a lot of the stuff here adhere to the principles that were like post World War II and like all that group of guys that really figured out the physics behind so many things, and then they turned into race car guys, or maybe their kids or their brothers turned into race car guys, and stuff like this really reflects that. And like you said, there's certain parts of the market that have kind of veered off. Is it to make customers happy, to make bean counters happy? Who knows? But it's cool to see like really pure stuff like this.
Yeah, this is a neat vehicle. You almost lay down in the car. The shifter is very odd at first in its position and whatnot. The engine has a very unique sound to it. Comes online pretty hard. Tremendous amount of rubber and brakes and downforce, and just, you should see it with the body on. Really neat machine.
Okay, we're ready when you are.
Thanks, Joby. Comfort level's high. Trying to figure out what song I'm gonna play from my getaway when I'm out on 95 running from the chopper. So we're into some power runs. We started off with our first run was around 230 horsepower. and it just made 590, which it's right around 18 pounds of boost. Makes some pretty neat sounds. We're gonna mess with the ignition timing a little bit more because this is an endurance race kind of vehicle. So when it's on, say, the high bank at Daytona and it's just wide open at speed, the engine has to be able to live through those types of exercises. So we've already moved the mixture aim down a little bit, and it cost us a little bit of power, but we kind of like find the threshold, and now we'll find our timing threshold as far as when it will start to pull down on power. So my first like depowering run was 2 degrees and it lost 20 horsepower. So we may just leave those 2 degrees out because 20 horsepower isn't necessarily gonna make or break it on the race course, because again, this is not a, it's a vintage racing car and it's expensive, so you'd hate to break it. But the shifter is really interesting. The thought of piloting a vehicle like that on a race course, especially 40 years ago, is a wild thought. Nearly 600 to the tire at 18 pounds. You kind of, it's a small number in today's world, but if you go back to where cars had 100, 120 horsepower, you think about a 600 horsepower to the tire. Pretty wild thought. So we'll do a few more runs, but it's really neat to work with an oddity of a vehicle like this. Really cool car. So our dyno session was a success. This is actually the second or third time I've worked on this car, kind of poking on it as it's going back into service. And this is my man Brett, and Brett's a pretty badass dude. He's been working on and around these cars for a number of years.
26, 27.
And he's gonna share with us some of the fun facts we may not know. So hit us with it.
All right, so what you don't see, this is basically a Porsche 962 with the bodywork off it. This car's been heavily modified by our company, Gunnar Racing. This car originally started out in '87 as a closed cockpit coupe, and then it got converted in '88, '89 to an open cockpit. So this was one of the first open cockpit cars there was for running in IMSA. And the car ran '89 through '90 as open cockpit. So we've had some real famous drivers: Paul Newman, Kyle Petty, Gunnar at Gunnar Racing. He drove the car. So quite a few famous drivers have been in this car. And now, since we've converted it to Motec, unbelievable. Since the old system was an analog system, and the response times were really slow for anything. So, but it's come a long ways. Cool car. I wish you could see it with all the bodywork on it, because it doesn't look like this. It's
I don't know.
Quite a bit. I mean, it's
working through all of, even this, just working through this section of the vehicle.
Yep.
You wouldn't see all of this with bodywork
No.
on it. It is really
No.
a neat piece of
know,
machinery.
In my job, I've been privileged to go through and work on some really, really cool cars, all the way up into the late 2010, 11, in competition wise. So yeah, it's a neat piece. This is history. This is old school.
Yeah.
It doesn't get, in '80s, these cars basically ran from the late '78s, '80s, all the way up to the 2000s in this kind of configuration.
And it's air cooled.
Air cooled, everything.
And
no water.
when you look at the turbo system layout, you got to kind of wrap your head around, like, a lot of times they'll talk about fitting a turbo system in a vehicle. And when you look at the layout of the engine and the intercooler, the header, they had some space to explore. And even with these types of horsepower numbers, what kind of speeds would a car like this go, a closed cockpit car?
Daytona on the banking, 190s, 197. You know,
Back in the 80s.
Back in the 80s, yeah.
Wow.
Incredibly fast. And they weren't big horsepower, but they were made to run for 24 hours at a time and more. You know, some of the cars, you know, you wouldn't do, your whole object would be go race a 24-hour race, go to the next race, not change the motor.
Yeah, so it's a big combustion chamber, low compression ratio, hard to detonate because it's going to see sustained load and sustained heat. And when you take that into the tuning aspect of it, you know, it's sure an engine like this can make more power if you put modern turbos on it and ran more boost and had more compression, on and on and on, but you need longevity.
Yeah, the longevity, because at Daytona on the banking and stuff, you know, you're full throttle for 35 seconds, 40 seconds at full boost, which, you know, it's not big numbers on the boost, but still, you know, it's a lot of heat. And, you know, most of the time during the races at night, you could see the headers glowing red and the turbos through the bodywork. It's unreal.
Pretty cool.
You know,
pretty cool.
You don't realize what exactly is happening until you run for 24 hours and see what all breaks. And, you know, there'd be times we'd have to come in and put turbos on the car during the race because we'd spit the bearings out or whatever. They just come apart.
Huh. Pretty awesome. Well, I appreciate you
no problem.
letting me work on something like this. This is a real treat. You know, the majority of stuff I work on is fairly modern. And I was super intimidated the first time I saw this car because it's just a wild piece of hardware, but really neat experience. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's neat to see what kind of engineering was happening. And, you know, if it was built in '87, so it had been mid '70s, this stuff was designed. And it started off as a 935 first, and then they turned it into the 962s. The motor's just facing the other direction. Yeah. So, yeah, it's definitely a piece of history.
Cool.
So anytime you go to a vintage race, go watch because there's a lot of cool stuff out there.
And there's probably some pretty neat guys that that can have a conversation or two.
Yep.